Hello. Our story begins on Dathomir and the wreckage of civilization. The CIS was marching on her home. Her sisters were being slaughtered and General Grievous cheated in an engagement with a Saj Ventress. Inside the cave that the Dathomir called home was Mother Talzin, leader of the Nightsister Clan. Next to her, inside this hidden cave, was old Daka, the ancient witch who was more knowledgeable than anyone else within their clan. Talzin stood over a cauldron, freshly brought into the secret room. As old Daka was raising the dead, Mother Talzin was infected with the desire to wreak havoc across the Sith lines. She made dealings with each individual she came across. For Dooku, she had a lock of his hair, and she would make him pay for sending his armies to her. His death would be painful. She spoke in a native dialect and reached into the Force and began a ritual to punish Dooku for his crimes against her people. Dooku sat inside of his office on the other side of the galaxy. He was watching the events unfold on Dathomir from a hologram when he felt a terrible pain. Warts began to form on his head from nowhere. Inside his body, he felt aching unlike anything he'd ever felt before. Inside the caves, Mother Talzin took a needle and pressed it towards the head of a figurine made to look like Dooku, created from a strand of his hair. The magic of the Nightsister Clan was truly remarkable, and Dooku realized in this moment that if Grievous didn't kill Mother Talzin, then he would pay an eternal price for crossing her. He contacted General Grievous as a hole opened up in his stomach, one telling him to call off his armies. Grievous was cutting through Nightsisters as he watched this unfold in front of him. The droid general wasn't familiar with the Force or how to use it, but seeing something crawling out of Dooku's stomach was terrifying, even to him. Dooku tried to squeeze words out of his mouth, but he couldn't as he fell backwards. Grievous tried to get an answer, and instead of getting one, Mother Talzin used the Force and the connection in the hologram to bind herself to General Grievous. There wasn't much, but by extracting the Force, memories, and communication with Grievous from Dooku, she was able to replicate the same mold inside of her dark lair. Dooku rolled on the ground as the communication cut out. General Grievous looked up and saw green mist coming from somewhere. Despite the hologram being all blue, the flares of the mist looked similar to that of the mist in the hologram from Dooku, so he took a chance. If he didn't act quickly, his master might be killed by this witch. Grievous marched forward as Dooku tried to stand up and make it to his bed, but he couldn't. His bones started pushing themselves through his skin, and his muscles tightened until tearing. He couldn't stop it, and every time he tried to ask for help, he fell further into pain. As a dark side user, he should have been able to use the pain to fuel him, but that wasn't how this worked. Mother Talzin laughed as she submerged Dooku into the cauldron once more, and he wheezed as green smoke poured out of his mouth. He tried calling to Mother Talzin, and while she could hear him through her ritual, she would show him no mercy. His blood ran cold, forcing his skin to feel icy from inside out, like an incurable itch from under the skin. It wasn't just painful, but insanely irritating. Talzin wished she could inflict this great pain on him for longer, but that wasn't something she could do at the moment. But her voice rang out in Dooku's ears. She used her icy voice to inflict terror on his mind before allowing the freezing cold blood to overpower his heart and kill him in the terribly painful death. Count Dooku was dead, and Talzin turned her attention to General Grievous, but it was too late. The monstrosity moved through her cave, cutting down the wall with an explosion before striking old Daka with his lightsaber. Her cauldron was spilled out on the floor, and in a gut reaction, she cultivated the power bestowed to her by her instructors and passed herself into General Grievous, vanishing before his firing squad of commando droids could vanquish her from existence. Grievous was satisfied because it looked like they had won the day. Without knowledge of Dooku's demise, he requested his cape and went out to hunt down the rest of the Dathomirians. That was his main target at the moment. Afterwards, he would learn what he needed to regarding Count Dooku. Mother Talzin, while residing within General Grievous, forged a connection, one that he wouldn't be able to break free from until death. She made the bond so necessary that if he were to try and kill her, or anyone else did, he would die instantaneously. She became like breathing to him, and without her, he'd be nothing. Talzin motioned her spirit from Grievous's body as she moved back into her cave after he left. The droid assault came and went. She knew there'd be no point in continuing the fight against the droid forces. With old Daka dead, the undead sisters wouldn't continue fighting, and their coven didn't have enough members to carry on the fight. Talzin saved what little she could, but she, at the end of the day, understood what was necessary. She needed to survive if the Nightsisters were to survive, and so aside from saving 3 or 4 lucky sisters, she was focused solely on ensuring she could control General Grievous. Among the survivors she came across were Ventress and Morgan Elsbeth. When the CIS left the planet, or at least the main army, she forced her sisters to remain hidden inside the main cave. They were not to leave the mouth of the cave unless she deemed it necessary to do so. The droid gunships would continue patrolling the area until everything was dead. The Nightsisters clan had to be exterminated. While Talzin was aware of what Grievous was doing, she was more focused on speaking to an old friend. They weren't really close, but Talzin knew how important it was to forge connections, especially in such dire circumstances. Talzin went to the mother of Singing Mountain Clan, and requested that she aid them in their fight against the darkness. The mother wasn't exactly on board with this entire idea. Her clan wasn't affected by the attack, and they weren't of the same blood. There was no doubt that Mother Talzin and the Nightsisters were the power of Dathomir, but Singing Mountain Clan didn't want to assist them in their fight. Then Talzin couldn't really force them to fight either. She could, but it would be pointless. She was hopeful that they could combine their unique forms of magic to tear down the establishment of the Sith. Due to everything transpiring the way it did, when Mother Talzin returned to the cave of her people, she set up her cauldron once more and began a new ritual. It was one founded in the use of her previous curse on Grievous. The remaining sisters were instructed to rest. They would need their strength when the time came. They listened to Talzin as she went into her cauldron and began her ritual. She went into General Grievous's mind and watched his every move. He was on the bridge of his flagship when Sidious contacted him, revealing that Dooku had been killed by the witches of Dathomir. Grievous quickly informed the Sith Lord that all the witches had been dealt with. Sidious thanked him, and then informed him that they'd have to move on without Dooku, giving him a quick rundown of what would happen following his death. In reality, Sidious was really annoyed. The fact that Dooku died to those witches was just pure arrogance. Whatever he did to piss him off would surely come back to bite him, because Mother Talzin was not forgiving. Despite Sidious believing that Grievous was right about the death of the witches, there was still the fear that Grievous wasn't right. Mother Talzin, sensing this fear, knew that the Sith Lord would come to Dathomir to see for himself. In an effort to avoid such encounters, Talzin made a countermove. While Talzin, Sidious, and Yoda were the most powerful beings in the galaxy before Anakin was born, she didn't want to face Sidious yet. They were very similar in power, both with the Force and their understanding of it. But the biggest problem for her was the fact that Sidious actively practiced the Force. He was consistently working with it and using it to gain strength. He trained and used it every second of the day, where she never needed to because she wasn't waging war on the Jedi. Talzin knew that to compete with Palpatine, she needed to harvest the living Force, and due to her extensive knowledge on it, she sent out her sisters to a planet far away and gave them very specific instructions. In the meantime, she would make acquaintance with the Frangal cult of Zardosa Styx. They would bow to her power. As she was doing this, she also started to use Grievous for her own personal gain. Talzin abandoned Dathomir as her sisters fled to Bardotta to capture someone. Due to how the Jedi operated, they could very well get themselves involved in the situation, which again was something she didn't want to deal with. As a way to create a distraction for herself and her sisters, she used her bond with Grievous to turn him against the Separatist leaders. He did so without understanding of why he was doing it. What made this so much easier for Talzin was the fact that Grievous didn't have a connection to the Force. He was mostly machine. If this was a regular person, it would have taken more concentration. If it was a Jedi-level sentient, then it would take immense focus. But Talzin could kind of multitask with this, which is why she was instructing the Fangirl cult on what to do while she was forcing Grievous to slaughter the Separatist Council. Her motive was simple, being that she was able to search through Grievous's memories and use information bestowed to Grievous by Palpatine during their small conversation. She could kill the Separatist leaders and activate the reserve military. All the death, destruction, and carnage that could come of this was simply because a witch didn't want Jedi interference. It was especially important because on Zardosa Styx, there was an ancient technique in which the sun could align and it would drag the living Force from any given being. This was where her sisters came in at. Ventress, Elsbeth, and 2 other sisters, which were named Trez and Namesh, went to Bardotta to capture Queen Julia. She, like the rest of her species, were highly attuned to the living Force. Unlike the Barando sages, they weren't overly friendly with the Jedi, so their lack of bond with the Jedi exposed them to a rogue attack from the Nightsisters without proper protection. Queen Julia would be apprehended in a few-day-long mission and then brought to Zardosa Styx, where Mother Talzin was waiting. Due to her having to wait for a few days, she had a cauldron brought to her and she used her dark magic to make Grievous do unimaginable things. Not only did he cripple the Separatist leadership, but he activated the reserve battle droids and fleets, sending them out across the galaxy. In the initial blitz, Jedi Council members Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, and Obi-Wan Kenobi were killed. In the second blitz, General Grievous was responsible for the death of Depa Billaba and Caleb Dume, as well as the total annihilation of their clone troopers. Quinlan Vos and the Tiplee and Tiplar sisters were also killed in the same second blitz. The Jedi were in complete chaos, and Palpatine was completely caught off guard. Initially, he believed that Grievous had betrayed him, and then he contacted the good general. In this communication, Sidious planned on killing Grievous, so he could assume control over the Separatist military with Admiral Trench, and then put a placeholder into power of their government to maintain the status quo for the time being. When they spoke, Grievous didn't even speak in Galactic Common. He was mumbling in tongues or something, and as a result, Sidious used his power to try and lift Grievous up and force choke him to death. But it didn't work. He had never failed a force choke, not even when he was a kid. This was confusing. Palpatine didn't understand. How was this? And then it clicked. He realized that there was a protective barrier around Grievous, and it came from none other than another powerful being in the Force. Palpatine then realized that his greatest fears had come true. If Mother Talzin survived, and he created a Force bond with Grievous, then she could effectively wipe the Republic off the map. This could be her grand revenge against the Sith and whatever Dooku did. The truest irony of this was it came directly from him. If Sidious didn't tell Dooku to kill Asajj, then none of this would have ever happened. Palpatine immediately sent out clone scouts to find the Dathomirian witch and inform him of where she was. He was going to deal with this himself. Realistically, Palpatine could dispatch Mother Talzin in a contest of the Force at this current state. She was equal in power to him, but due to his extensive training, he would win. At a long distance, the only reason he didn't break through her protective barrier around Grievous was the bond she created with him. It was like breathing for him, so in a way, it was like Sidious was trying to choke her from long distance, which wouldn't really work. Not only because of their equal power, but the distance between them and the amount of energy he would need to exert to destroy her. With Palpatine panicking and trying to rally the Jedi together for a pushback against the CIS, Mother Talzin took full advantage of her distraction. No one, not even Sidious, would expect Mother Talzin to do what she was about to do. By dragging the living Force out of a Bardotan like Queen Julia, she could gift herself powers greater than that of Master Yoda and Darth Sidious. Her entire purpose for doing this was literally that, power. She was going to gain more power than the Sith had ever seen and exact her revenge. She had other plans after that, but this was her main focus for the time being. Talzin was consumed with more vengeance than she had ever felt before, and instead of being fearful of it, she embraced it. To Ventress, Elsbeth, Trez, and Nimesh, this was terrifying but almost empowering. They were with their Great Mother, as the cult referred to her on Zardosa Styx, when the ritual began. Talzin spoke in her native dialect as she summoned a spell to aid the pull of the power from the alignment of the suns. Slowly, miniature glasses closed together, and as they did, Queen Julia begged for freedom. But Mother Talzin reassured her that this would be painless. The sun blasted through the alignment and beamed against the Queen's body as she cried out in a short agony before her spirit was transferred into a small green orb that Talzin was holding. She smiled as the cult around her worshipped the Great Mother's powers. She raised her hands and told them that their glorious ceremony was completed. The Queen fell to the ground and her body vanished, becoming one with the orb. Talzin looked to her sisters and told them that it was time to return to Dathomir. Being that Sidious had been to Dathomir since this ritual started, he was confused. The witches were completely gone, and with Grievous approaching the core, he was worried that he might have to deal with Grievous himself. But the issue is, Talzin, or whoever was controlling him, wasn't doing normal military tactics. The bond with Talzin and Grievous was a little odd, like how most things are with Force magic. While she could control him, she wasn't in full control, so in a way, Grievous knew what he was doing, but he wasn't fully capable of comprehending what it was. so all of his fleet movements, battle tactics, and in-battle decisions were a little odd. They weren't normal in the slightest. Talzin didn't know what she was doing in battle, but she also didn't want to sever the connection with Grievous by loosening the reins too much. He was her scapegoat to greater power, and she couldn't afford to accidentally kill him so he could use a more sound strategy with a military that had tripled in size overnight. Palpatine abandoned Dathomir and searched for a way to find Grievous and kill him. What he did was have a clone trooper report come back to inform the Jedi Order that the witches of Dathomir were involved. Without concrete evidence himself, Palpatine needed someone else to run a flak for him against Grievous, while he maintained control over the Republic and the Separatists without Dooku or the CIS Council. It was very stressful, and the Jedi were confused on how Palpatine or even the clone reporting on the incident knew what Dathomiri magic was. But they believed it. These actions were erratic. However, as much as they wanted to potentially deal with the witches and wipe them out for good, they couldn't. There weren't the resources available to do that. With 4 council members killed already, one of which being Master of the Order, the Jedi were operating in accordance to defending the Republic from absolute desolation. They didn't have time to hope that a theory about green mist emanating from General Grievous was from Mother Talzin or the witches. If they killed Grievous, that would sever the connection, as simple as that. That was their main focus. Upon her return to Dathomir, Mother Talzin led Ventress, Elsbeth, Trez, and Nemesh back into the caves. They were all watching the Great Mother with interest. She understood that what she was about to do might kill her, but in an effort to remain the most dominant power in the galaxy, she needed to combine her powers and usage of the living force to connect to their original home world. None of the sisters understood, but Talzin told them to make sure she was protected. She would need to focus every ounce of energy on this. The sisters believed that this would be an hour-long ordeal, but it wasn't. It started going on for 3 days, then the 6th, then the 2 weeks, and then on to the 3rd week it stopped. Talzin looked very weak and fragile after it. Despite the amount of energy she was pouring into this ritual, she was still holding a small connection with General Grievous. Talzin used a spell that the Mother of Singing Mountain Clan mastered. However, the spell was much larger, and once the connection was formed to the other side, she was able to open herself up to create a portal. Again, very similar to the spell that the Mother of Singing Mountain Clan used, but on a galactic level. Talzin connected to Cathral, Lachesis, and Akthathal. The Great Mothers then strengthened their connection, and by using the living force itself from Mother Talzin's orb, they created a thread between time and space. Talzin's power was amplified exponentially due to the orb containing the raw force, and that's how this worked. The 3 Great Mothers then used the force to guide the dead bodies of Peridia to Dathomir, where a new Nightsister Clan would be forged, one stronger than ever before. Despite the war taking a turn for the worst in all cases of the Jedi and the Sith, they all felt this shocking change. It was a sudden shift in the status quo. It was no longer just Sith and Jedi. Now there was something powerful that had just arrived from a galaxy away. Despite the Great Mothers running from something, they sealed the portal used to arrive to Dathomir, so what they were running from was once again cut off from the very force-connected galaxy they were now in. Sidious felt this pull, and because it had been 3 weeks with more Jedi losses and the CIS moving closer every hour, he needed to act. By this point, Alderaan had fallen. Despite their desperate work to defend themselves, the Republic was falling short due to the fact that they couldn't keep up with the Separatist war machine. Not even the Separatists could keep up. Admiral Trench tried to strategically approach the core, but Grievous didn't give him a chance to elaborate. They were going to win. That was their only motive. If he wanted to waste time for the sake of resources, then perhaps he wasn't capable of standing in command of the most powerful military the galaxy had ever seen. Grievous was assertive in his control, and without any chance to fix things, Sidious needed to go and find these witches. Luckily for him, one of these clone scouts reported members of the Dathomiri Nightsisters at the mouth of Talzin's old cave. Perhaps she did survive, and if she did, he would kill her himself. But Palpatine couldn't do this alone, knowing that in an effort to ensure she died, he needed to bring himself some allies. Sidious used a detachment of clones from Kamino and went straight to Dathomir to serve with them. The Republic Arquentins-class cruiser lowered through the atmosphere of the planet as it dropped clone gunships. Inside one of them was Darth Sidious. He was able to influence the clones to believe he was a Jedi Master, and they didn't question it. Morgan Elsbeth ran back into the cave and told Mother Talzin that the Republic was here for them. She smiled and turned to the Great Mothers and asked them for their assistance. They nodded their heads and turned to each other. Talzin looked to her 4 survivors and told them to deposit the remaining bodies of those from Peridea into the living waters of their cave. Ventress asked to help, but Talzin waved her hand as she stepped forward and walked out of the cave. She looked at the clones as they rushed through the forest tactically. Sidious marched through without fear of what he was coming to face. With these extra clones and the light cruiser hovering over the surface, he was more than safe. He looked at Talzin, who stood still, her eyes moving between the clones and then landing on him. He told her that this could end peacefully. If she severed the connection to Grievous, they didn't have to destroy each other. Talzin laughed to herself, telling him that his Sith apprentice made similar promises. This was half a lie, half a truth. She wanted Sidious to feel the need to attack first. Sidious pointed at her and expressed that he would make sure their people remained dead forever if they didn't stop. She looked around, telling him that his puppet Grievous killed everyone. She was all that remained, and now the Sith would go extinct on her watch. His lightsabers ignited and the clones raised their blasters. Talzin closed her eyes and reached up into the sky and spun her hands around, releasing green mist. The clones prepared to fire, and then multiple versions of Mother Talzin came out of the ground. Sidious told the clones to kill her now. They opened fire, but all they did was cut through mist. Not a single one of the Mother Talzin apparitions were real. They had been duped. As Sidious was trying to figure all this out, he looked towards the mouth of the cave where there was a shadow. From above him, thunder cracked, and one of the clones reacted. Sidious looked over, seeing the clone armor melt. It was acid rain. Sidious told the clones to run for the cave. It was the only safe place. They did, but the sprinkle turned into a downpour as the clones' armor melted away from their bodies and their skin was punctured by the sizzling acid from the sky. Palpatine was going to kill these evil witches, and he would enjoy every moment of it. As he got to the cave, he was stopped. There was a force barrier around it, and he could not break through. He used all of his power to push past the barrier, but when he looked up, he saw Mother Talzin flanked by the Great Mothers of Peridea. He tried everything he could, as the clones around him cried out in agony, doing anything they could to find cover. Sidious was using the Force to protect himself, but there were a few times when he was struck by the acid rain. He wanted to be out of this, but there was no escape. Another rumble of thunder crawled across the sky, and then a shock of lightning smashed through the bridge of the Arquentans, killing the captain and destroying the control center for the ship, dropping it out of orbit and sending it into a fiery blaze on the surface. Palpatine turned back, and watched the rubble blast into the sky as the screams of clones echoed out in the distance. The very few survivors were dying to the acid storm. Sidious looked at Talzin and told her to face him, to take him on as a true master of the Force. She spoke very delicately to him, telling him that he came to her home. He destroyed her people after stealing her son. Dathomir had been plagued by the Sith one too many times, and it was time for his entire religion to die out. There was no honor here. Palpatine ran for cover, his robes finally starting to break down, but as he turned back, the Great Mothers and Talzin were surrounding him. He tried to swing at him, igniting his lightsabers, and his hands were covered in acid rain, as he tried to do everything he could to cut them down. They felt so real, and they kept multiplying. There were so many of them. He wanted them to be destroyed. He shot lightning at them and used all of his power to try and break through their cave so he could kill them. But this was their home, and what he didn't understand was they had the living Force. It was aiding their power. Those connected to darkness cannot access the truest and rawest form of the Force, and yet Talzin was manipulating it against Palpatine here because of her orb. His death would be excruciating. It would take hours for him to die. It didn't matter what he did or where he went. Talzin allowed her dark magic to surround his mind, making everything fuzzy. He tried to break free, and when he did, his freedom lasted for moments, before the combined power of 4 Great Mothers forced him back into his terror. When Palpatine's body fell to the ground lifelessly, it was completely deformed. There were bumps and bruises, tears and cuts, as well as crevices everywhere. He was punished for something his apprentice did, but technically he did by telling his apprentice to do what he did. After all, though, it was a death only a Sith could deserve. His body was disgraced and a curse was put into it. The Nightsisters believed in a different afterlife than the Jedi and the Sith, and what they did was try to ensure he only existed in eternal suffering, which tragically for Sidious was something he would face. There were some things more terrifying than death. Talzin returned to their coven's cave, as the Great Mothers of Peridea got to work on resurrecting their sisters. She knew there was only one place to go next, and that was to make sure the Jedi and the Republic, and whoever else, were no longer a threat to her and her people. All of this came from her desire to protect her home world, and now that it was safe from the Sith, she had to ensure that nothing could ever harm her people again. Without having to worry about Sidious, who was the only individual to be semi-aware of her involvement, at least to her knowledge, she could focus on manipulating Grievous to finish her greatest desires. The Dathomir witch finished what she started. General Grievous's droid army was too large for the Republic to deal with, and in the weeks following Sidious's death and Palpatine's disappearance, the Republic crumbled. With it was the destruction of the Jedi Order and the disappearance of a few dozen members of their fallen order. The Senate was destroyed, with only a few representatives and senators surviving, and even more than that, there was a revenge tour for General Grievous. Despite him serving with the CIS, Mother Talzin didn't. The Separatists finally had themselves a victory, and in the ashes of the Republic they could build a government that didn't sell itself to corporate greed. Their wishes for a free system were quickly turned on its head, as Grievous's forces, after ravaging through the core and destroying civilization and every government known in the galaxy, ripped through the Confederacy. Without Dooku or the CIS Council, there was no one to stop this pursuit. Talzin's plan took over 6 months to complete, and all the while, her Nightsister Clan was reborn on Dathomir. Mother Talzin used her dark magic to make sure the galaxy paid for what her clan suffered through. When it was done, the galaxy was left in ashes, with no form of government left. She took General Grievous and his millions of battle droids and deposited them in the unknown regions. Once she had the droids shut down in a hidden location that she was only aware of, she severed her connection with Grievous. The tragic thing is, for the droid general, was despite him being controlled by Talzin, he got to live the life he wanted. He became the most effective conqueror in galactic history, and at the end of all of it, he didn't even settle for power, almost like he was killing simply for the sport of it, and in a way that was truer to Grievous than it was him to serve Dooku and the CIS. Even without full control over himself, he enjoyed the final months of his life, claiming victory for himself and his own cause, at least in his own mind, his own cause, because that's what it felt like. Mother Talzin considered, before destroying the Republic, using the same controlling spells to seize power in the galaxy, but she didn't want it. Her care was always her Nightsisters, and now her clan was completely protected from a galaxy that was ripped to pieces. While it would still take time to rebuild the Nightsister Clan, aside from the few Jedi that survived, there were no real challengers in the galaxy. Even more than that, in an odd way, despite her uses of dark magic, she brought balance to the Force by getting rid of the Sith. Her usage of the dark side was always in moderation in comparison to her uses of the Force by the Sith. She used it freely, not in a means to twist it or torture it. Now that there was dystopia across the civilized galaxy, Dathomir could regain its strength. Could they conquer? Sure, but in their minds, what would be the purpose of doing so? The Nightsister Clan had always had its strength in sisterhood, and their dominance over their home world. Talzin gave the secrets of the Separatist droid army to the Great Mothers, and for the coming centuries, Dathomir would remain untouched. There would be showings from survivors of the Jedi Order, but they would never wage war on the Sisters. The Jedi, after the fall of their order and the civilization of the galaxy, unified the Force entities from systems everywhere. The purpose of this unity was to understand how vastly unique the Force was, and why it was so important to respect every religion's understanding of it. Whether it be thread, magic, wills, or force, it was all the same, one connected body for all to share. Talzin would not destroy the Jedi, seeing how they had nothing to do with the attack on her people, but she would always pass on stories for her sisters, so that they, if ever attacked by a lesser foe, could rise up and destroy them. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to our patrons: Benjamin Wells, Ozpin, Angel Dust, Wolf Lover 1997, Alexandra Reese, The Beginning and End, Django Fat Clone, Nick 5098, INTJ Recluse, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tibbs, CC2024, Galactic Gaming, Tristan Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Granity Bane, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cullen Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlanger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewa 670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tam, John Nguyen, Sansa Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Cali, Galaxy 66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin 003, Lord Draken, Photos Legacy Star Wars, Airbus, Rex the Wolf, The Man 3 First Names, Dark Saint 46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing. For supporting the channel, smash that like button. If you want to support me in other ways, go check out PPC, really cool things on there. Otherwise, let's talk about this story. So initially, I went into this with the idea of Mother Talzin becoming Empress of the Galaxy, kind of like we did with Grievous and Maul. And as I got into this, I realized that she would not crave power like Grievous or Maul, for example. She would not be able to go that distance, even in a what if. I think Dathomir is a really unique place, and I've always been really pretty neutral with the witches concept in Star Wars, and so getting into this was a lot of fun because I went back to that really forgotten arc in Clone Wars Season 6, and I got to kind of see Mother Talzin try and use the Living Force, and I thought that'd be a really cool way for Mother Talzin to gain powers that are greater than her own. From what it seems in the episode, using the Living Force for her would be like unlocking her fullest potential, and so I really wanted to kind of go the distance with that. I think for Mother Talzin, her version of being Emperor is still being Mother of the Nightsisters, but completely wiping out any form of civilized government in the galaxy. And so in a way, this is how Mother Talzin becomes Empress of the galaxy, because she has destroyed all order just by using General Grievous as a scapegoat. So I hope you all enjoyed this relatively neutral, dark ending. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.